At the beginning of January 2025, something woke beneath Santorini. Not with fire, not with warning. With a tremor so subtle that most of the island's residents slept through it. Within minutes, automated systems registered the first in what would become a cascade of earthquakes that still hasn't stopped. By sunrise, over 300 individual tremors had rattled the island. By the end of February, that number exceeded 28,000. 28,000 earthquakes in 6 weeks. This isn't normal volcanic unrest. This is the crust fracturing in real time, revealing a secret that's been hiding beneath one of the world's most iconic destinations for millennia. The story begins 250 kilometers below your feet. That's where the African tectonic plate meets its end, sliding beneath the Aegean in a process that's been grinding forward for millions of years. This isn't a gentle handshake between continents. It's actually a collision happening at the speed your fingernails grow, which in geological terms might as well be a car crash. The African plate descends at a steep angle, dragging with it something critical: seawater and sediments loaded with volatiles. As this material plunges into the mantle, temperatures spike past 1,200 degrees Celsius. The water doesn't boil off cleanly. Instead, it infiltrates the surrounding rock, chemically altering it, lowering its melting point in ways that create magma fundamentally different from what you'd find beneath Hawaii or Iceland. This magma is a pressure cooker. Water content reaches 6% by weight in some pockets. Carbon dioxide saturates the melt. These dissolved gases transform ordinary molten rock into something exponentially more dangerous. When pressure drops, suddenly, those gases don't just bubble out, they explode. Now, Santorini is uniquely terrifying because the magma doesn't collect in one neat chamber. Advanced seismic tomography conducted by Dr. Paraskevi Nomaku's team in 2019 revealed something that upended decades of assumptions. The island sits atop a branching network of reservoirs interconnected by vertical dikes and horizontal sills that stretch from shallow depths of 3 kilometers down to a massive melt zone at 13 kilometers. This isn't a volcano, it's a volcanic system. And the geometry matters more than anyone realized. The shallow reservoir sits directly beneath the caldera, a pocket of molten rock barely 3 kilometers from the surface. But deeper down, at 11 to 13 kilometers, a broad pool of partially molten material acts as a source region, feeding both Santorini and its submarine neighbor Colombo through interconnected pathways. You can think of it as an underground highway system where magma can choose multiple routes to the surface, sometimes avoiding the main exit entirely. This sort of architectural complexity means traditional monitoring approaches miss critical warning signs. Yes, instruments watching the main caldera might detect nothing at all while magma migrates laterally toward unexpected breach points. And in January 2025, that system started moving. A geophysicist with the GFZ Helmholtz Center in Potsdam, Dr. Marius Isken, specializes in seismic monitoring across the Mediterranean. His team maintains real-time data streams from dozens of stations, most of which report the kind of background noise that makes for boring graphs and quiet nights. This incident was different. The automated alerts started pinging before dawn. Not one station, not two. Every monitor across Santorini's caldera was lighting up simultaneously. The initial tremors clustered beneath the island's central caldera at depths of 8 to 10 kilometers, exactly where previous surveys had mapped the deepest magma reservoirs. But then the earthquake started moving. Over the next 48 hours, the seismic activity migrated northeast at a rate of roughly 2 kilometers per day. The epicenters traced a path from Santorini's caldera toward the Kameni Islands, then further offshore toward the submarine Colombo volcano, 7 kilometers to the northeast. Of course, Isken's team recognized the pattern immediately. This wasn't random noise. This was literally magma forcing its way through the crust, fracturing rock along pre-existing fault lines that connect Santorini to its underwater neighbor. The shallow events told an even more urgent story. By early February, the majority of tremors clustered between 4 and 6 kilometers depth, matching precisely the depth range of Santorini's main magma chambers identified in prior imaging studies. The frequency was relentless. Some hours saw dozens of individual events, creating a near-continuous rumble that residents described as living inside a drum. Car alarms triggered spontaneously, windows rattled without wind. Geodetic models calculated that approximately 300 million cubic meters of magma had intruded into the shallow crust over just a few weeks. 300 million cubic meters. That's enough magma to fill the Empire State Building 240 times. But wait, this gets strange. The magnitude 5.3 earthquake that struck on February 12th should have been the main event. It was strong enough to crack plaster in Fira, the island's capital, and send residents scrambling into the streets at 3 a.m. Instead, it was just the loudest voice in a chorus that refused to stop singing. If you've seen pictures of Santorini, you've seen the evidence without realizing it. Those iconic whitewashed buildings cling to cliffs that aren't natural formations. They're the walls of a collapsed volcano, the remnants of an eruption so catastrophic that it may have ended an entire civilization 3,600 years ago. The Minoan eruption didn't just destroy the island, it excavated it. The explosion ejected roughly 60 cubic kilometers of material, creating a caldera 7 kilometers across and leaving behind vertical cliffs over 300 meters high. I know, these look like pretty backdrops for Instagram photos, but they're actually scars, and scars are weaknesses. Beneath these cliffs, a network of faults slices through the crust like fractures in glass. Some trend southwest to northeast, perfectly aligned with the direction magma traveled during the 2025 crisis. Others ring the caldera in concentric circles, remnants of previous collapse events that have never fully healed. The fault architecture tells a story of violence. High-resolution bathymetric surveys conducted between 2019 and 2023 mapped these structures in unprecedented detail. The data revealed that faults don't just cut through the island, they penetrate deep into the volcanic edifice, some extending 5 kilometers into the crust. Recent marine surveys revealed something more disturbing. These faults don't stop at the shoreline. Oh no, they continue underwater, connecting Santorini to Colombo through a system of fractures that form what geologists now call the Kemeny-Colombo line. This matters because fault lines are highways for magma. When pressure builds in one part of the system, magma doesn't always take the most direct route upward. It exploits weaknesses, squeezing through cracks, migrating laterally, sometimes bypassing the main volcanic center entirely. Between 1925 and 1950, Santorini experienced a series of eruptions that demonstrated exactly this sort of behavior. The Kemeny Islands, those dark volcanic cones sitting in the middle of the caldera, grew from repeated intrusions of magma that found paths through fractured rock. Every eruption followed a predictable sequence: months of earthquakes, ground deformation, increased gas emissions, then a sudden breach as magma found a new route to the surface. The 1950 eruption was the last time molten rock broke through, but the fault lines never stopped moving. Even during supposedly quiet decades, GPS measurements detected millimeter-scale shifts. The crust was breathing, flexing, adjusting to stresses that never fully dissipated. Then January 2025 arrived, and the breathing turned into something else entirely. Andreas Papadakis manages a boutique hotel on Santorini's western edge, overlooking the caldera. By the second week of February, his phone had become a weapon of anxiety. The WhatsApp group he shared with other hotel owners, restaurant managers, and local business operators had transformed from casual industry gossip into a real-time panic feed. Messages arrived faster than he could read them. Another 4.2 just now. Felt it in Oya. GPS showing more uplift near Kemeny. Anyone else's guess asking about evacuation plans? The official evacuation order arrived via text message at 2:17 a.m. on February 16th. Not a phone call, not a siren. A government text message that read like a weather alert. By dawn, the port at Athenios was chaos. Over 11,000 people would leave the island in less than a week. The ferries designed to handle a few thousand tourists per day suddenly faced demand that exceeded capacity by factors of 4 or 5. Ticket counters ran out of forms. The single road leading down to the port jammed with buses, taxis, rental cars, all converging on a bottleneck never designed for emergency evacuation. Families clutched suitcases. Hotel staff dragged carts piled with linens and belongings. Elderly residents gripped their pets, refusing to board without them. The airport pretty much told a similar story. Charter flights queued wing to wing, but the terminal could only process a fraction of the crowd. Hundreds waited in the parking lot, some sleeping on their bags, others refreshing airline apps every few minutes, desperate for any seat off the island. We all know that fear moves faster than official orders. By the time civil protection officials set up coordination centers, word of mouth and social media had already emptied half the hotels. But here's what no one talks about. For those who stayed behind, the island felt hollow. Schools closed, restaurants shuttered. The constant hum of tourist activity faded into the background noise of distant sirens and departing ships. In villages above the caldera, grandparents gathered on balconies, watching columns of dust rise from the convoys below. Some refused to leave, clinging to the belief that the island had survived worse. Same old story. In terms of economics, well, it was brutal. Santorini's tourism industry generates approximately 500 million euros annually, supporting nearly 90% of the island's employment. The evacuation effectively shut down this economic engine overnight. Hotels lost reservations extending months into the future. Restaurants dumped perishable inventory. Tour operators watched cruise ships redirect to alternative ports, taking with them revenue that would never return. The evacuation exposed the uncomfortable truth about modern disaster response. The network that ultimately moved people wasn't a government hotline or an emergency drill. It was a patchwork of phone calls, group chats, and word of mouth. When the ground shakes and the future is uncertain, people reach for each other, even as they're forced to scatter. While evacuations unfolded above ground, scientists were watching something unfold below. Using a combination of high-resolution marine seismic surveys and magnetotelluric imaging, scientists produced the first three-dimensional map of the island's underground architecture. What they discovered was breathtaking in its complexity. Instead of a single isolated magma chamber, the data revealed a branching network stretching from shallow depths of 3 kilometers down to a vast pool of partially molten rock at 11 to 13 kilometers. These deep melts don't just feed Santorini. They connect to Colombo through a system of dikes, vertical sheets of magma that can propagate through the crust at rates between 0.1 and 0.5 kilometers per day. The 2025 crisis confirmed what the imaging had predicted. Magma wasn't just rising vertically, it was moving laterally, exploiting the fault network that connects the two volcanic centers. The real breakthrough came from tracking how quickly conditions changed. Magma can travel laterally between reservoirs at speeds that bypass expected routes entirely. During the 2025 swarm, earthquake epicenters migrated from Santorini's main caldera to offshore locations near Colombo in a matter of days, not years. This changes the threat assessment fundamentally. Volcanic hazard models traditionally assume magma rises through a central conduit, giving scientists time to detect precursor signals and issue warnings. But if magma can migrate laterally through fault networks, eruptions could occur in totally unexpected locations with no warning. Think about that. We know Colombo sits 7 kilometers northeast of Santorini, submerged beneath 500 meters of water. Its last major eruption occurred in 1650 AD, killing 70 people and generating tsunamis that reached the coast of Turkey. If the 2025 magma intrusion had continued along the Kameni-Colombo line and breached the seafloor at Colombo, instead of stalling beneath Santorini, the consequences would have been terrible. I mean, really terrible. Submarine eruptions generate explosive interactions between magma and seawater, producing pyroclastic flows that can travel across the seafloor at speeds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour. Tsunamis would reach coastal communities with little to no warning. Sadly, most of the monitoring equipment tracking Santorini's unrest sits on land. The submarine flanks, where magma might breach unexpectedly, remain largely unmonitored. All right, let's talk about what happens if Santorini actually erupts. Not a small effusive event like 1950. Not the kind of eruption that creates pretty lava flows and photo opportunities. The kind that geologists categorize as VEI6 or even higher. The Minoan eruption 3,600 years ago falls into this category. Modern analysis estimates it ejected between 60 and 100 cubic kilometers of material into the atmosphere, roughly 4 times the volume of the 1883 Krakatoa eruption. The ash fallout blanketed the eastern Mediterranean, collapsing roofs across Crete and possibly contributing to the decline of Minoan civilization. If Santorini produces an eruption of similar magnitude today, the consequences extend far beyond Greece. Climate models show that a VEI6 eruption here could inject over 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere. Mind you, this isn't just an air quality issue. Sulfur dioxide converts to sulfuric acid aerosols that remain suspended for months to years, reflecting sunlight and cooling global temperatures. The 1815 Tambora eruption in Indonesia, a VEI7 event, caused what historians call the year without a summer in 1816. Crop failures across Europe and North America led to widespread famine. Global temperatures dropped by 0.4 to 0.7 degrees Celsius, ruining weather patterns worldwide. Santorini sits in the middle of the Mediterranean, surrounded by some of the most densely populated and economically critical regions on Earth. Europe's airspace, among the busiest on the planet, would shut down as ash clouds drifted across flight paths. The 2010 Eyjafjallajökull eruption in Iceland grounded air travel for a week, stranding millions of passengers and costing the global economy an estimated $5 billion. Santorini's location means ash would reach major European hubs, Athens, Rome, Istanbul, within hours. Depending on wind patterns, London, Paris, and Frankfurt could face weeks of flight cancellations. Of course, agriculture faces direct threats. Crops across southern Europe and the Middle East would endure weeks of reduced sunlight and acid rain. Climate models predict potential harvest losses of 15 to 20% in the first growing season, with cascading effects on global food prices. The supply chain implications extend further. Mediterranean shipping routes carry approximately 30% of global container traffic. Global trade routes would face weeks or months of uncertainty, amplifying shortages and price volatility already stressed by recent geopolitical tensions. Yet despite these risks, the monitoring network remains incomplete. Most seismic sensors sit on land, leaving submarine flanks in the dark. Satellite radar provides excellent coverage for ground deformation, but it can't detect magma movement in real time. The early warning system that could provide hours or days of notice before an eruption depends on dense networks of sensors that simply don't exist across much of Santorini's submerged volcanic complex. In simple words, without these comprehensive seabed observatories, the next major eruption could catch the world off guard. It's been months since the 2025 crisis began. The earthquake swarm has calmed, the evacuation orders have been lifted, tourists have returned, filling hotels and photographing sunsets from the Caldera cliffs, largely unaware of the forces churning beneath their feet. But the instruments haven't stopped watching. Scientists don't know when the next eruption will happen. They can't predict whether it will be a modest, effusive event or a catastrophic explosion. What they do know is that Santorini's volcanic system is active, dynamic, and connected to processes that operate on timescales far longer than human observation. The fault lines that define the island's shape aren't dormant scars. They're active pathways, ready to guide magma toward the surface whenever pressure builds sufficiently. The 28,000 earthquakes recorded in early 2025 was the largest and most intense seismic sequence in Santorini's modern history, far surpassing the activity that preceded the 1950 eruption. And the magma that intruded during those weeks hasn't vanished. It's still there, cooling slowly at depth, releasing volatiles, potentially priming the system for instability. Every pulse of magma that rises through the crust carries a fresh dose of gas and heat. Every earthquake that fractures rock creates new pathways. Every centimeter of ground deformation signals movement in a system that's been building towards something for decades, possibly centuries. Santorini's caldera is a wound that refuses to fully heal. The forces that created it, subduction, melting, volatile-rich magma accumulation, haven't stopped. They've just paused, waiting for the next chapter in a story that's been unfolding for millions of years. The countdown to the next eruption didn't begin in January 2025. It began 3,600 years ago when the Minoan eruption collapsed the caldera and left behind fractures that have never stopped moving. We're just watching now with instruments sensitive enough to hear the island whisper its secrets, and those whispers are getting louder. So what do you think lies beneath Santorini's iconic cliffs? A sleeping giant about to wake, or a restless system that's simply breathing the way it always has? Drop your theory in the comments, because honestly, we're all trying to figure this out together. Subscribe for more mysteries that challenge what we think we know about our planet, and check out the next video here.